Hi, friends, and welcome back to Millennials Gone Circular, the podcast making circularity a reality. I am your co-host, Caitlin Sockwell, joined as always by Angelica Barrios and Saeed Fadel. We are also joined today by none other than Anna Raudaskoski, founder of Regenerative Unlimited and author of Circular Strategies for Success. Anna is definitely a pioneer in circular thinking and has spent over 2 decades helping changemakers design for a regenerative future. Today, we'll learn about designing for circularity and Anna's circular design framework. We'll also learn why design is the secret ingredient for regenerative change. Without further ado, let's listen in.
All right, Millennials Gone Circular, welcome back to the show. I hope wherever you are, whether you're on your commute, cooking dinner, or pretending to work while secretly listening to this podcast, you are doing well. Of course, as always, I'm joined by my co-hosts, Angelica and Caitlin. How are you both doing today? How is the transition from summer to autumn? Because I don't know if it's just me, but I'm really struggling in the morning. Do I wear a coat or not? And also, should I start take my vitamin D or not?
Yes, start yesterday with the vitamin D.
Wow, okay.
And yeah, it's going well. I sneezed 1,000 times yesterday, thought I was going to get sick. So I wasn't sure if it was like the change in season. But fall is my spirit season. So I love it and I welcome it. And I just love a good cup of hot protein cocoa I have here.
Very good.
That's me.
Angelica, how is your morning?
It's going very well, actually. I have been in the second, seasonal round of flu on the past days, but now I'm good. But it has been 2 flus since the weather started changing. So I was like, the hell? But anyways, now I'm feeling very good. This morning I'm feeling more energetic and the flu is going out finally of my body. So besides that, everything well.
Sounds like a lot of calling for adaptation. And the thing is with it, I feel like you're already a season ahead of us, probably. I think it would be really cold there. Anyway, thanks for the updates. Now and in today's episode, it's a special one because we have got a rockstar guest, founder of Regenerative Unlimited, pioneer in circular design, and she's also the author of the book Circular Strategies for Success. Anna, thank you for being here and welcome to Millennial Gone Circular podcast.
So much for the invitation. I love to be here with you.
To start out, I think the person listening right now would like to hear your story, your background, and especially your journey working in the circular economy.
Well, the story starts in 2006. I changed careers and I was finishing my second master's studies in the UK, London. I studied international relations, which is perfect for systems thinking type of approach. However, we didn't have anything related to sustainability. I hope it's changed since. But I was working, doing temp jobs, and a friend of mine, a colleague, showed on her computer screen that, I'd really like to study this program. And it was called Corporate Social Responsibility. And I read the description. And still today, I remember the moment when reading the description that companies could be a force for good. And I thought that this is mind-blowing. This is really the revolutionary thought for me. Because I had been kind of okay, what do I do after my studies? What's my next passion? And literally at that very moment, I knew that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Now, this was kind of before the circular economy concept, as we know it nowadays, had kind of emerged. Of course, circular economy had been known in the academic circles for decades. But then if we fast forward a few years, and I was kind of dreaming about having my own company, And then in 2012, I had come back to Finland and I was reading an article by Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And I thought to myself that, hang on, this is beautiful. This is great. Because those kind of issues and challenges that I, in my previous job as a sustainability manager, had encountered, those kind of we really wanted to take it into the core strategy, but never quite managed to do it. And then when I read about the circular economy approach, I thought that, this is it. So kind of we need to shift and start using the mindset, the toolkit that the circular economy provides. And then 2013, I co-founded Finland's first circular economy consultancy. And then for the past 12 years, I've been working both in Finland and internationally on different continents, working with businesses, ministries, public organizations, developing strategic roadmaps, developing circular design guidelines, developing a lot of training programs and kind of change programs, how to transition from linear to circular. And then just to wrap up, last year, I just had a very strong intuition that now it's time to fulfill my long-term dream, to write a book. And then I got to work. And then in March this year, 2025, Circular Strategies for Success came out. And then I also started feeling, because I've been spending a lot of time in Spain for the past 4 years, that now maybe it's time to spread my wings and start working independently. So I left my company that I had co-founded and founded Regenerative Unlimited. So yeah, that's my story.
Congratulations on the book.
Yeah, and congratulations. Yeah.
Wow. An amazing story. I can really relate to the the first discovery of the Ellen MacArthur stuff. You read through it and go, oh my God, this makes so much sense. Why aren't we doing this already? Definitely can relate to that.
And another thing I noticed we could relate to, I think, is career change. I think also the three of us kind of had a career change at some point. So really interested to see that, yeah, we're not stuck in one area, but I think we're doing the right thing now. Anyway, thanks for sharing, Anna. I think that really sets the stage for today's conversation. And maybe we could dive into your book. I think like Circular Strategies for Success is such a powerful title. And I'm curious, like, how did you come to write this book? And what is the key message you're hoping the readers take away from it?
Well, if we start from the key message, and then I'll share a little bit about the background. But from my perspective, the kind of shift from a linear to a circular economy is the biggest and most significant market transformation of our time. And it really requires novel approach kind of to business and to research and development work, and also kind of rethinking the role of customer, if we think about it from business perspective. And the key word here and in the book is design. And when I talk about design, I take a very broad perspective. So we talk about design at systems level. We talk about design when we obviously design products, and that's the kind of most traditional definition. But we also can redesign our value chains, our business model, and also the customer experience. So we can and we should design our future. So it's not something that just falls on us and happens, but the way we kind of design our business operations is a way to design the future.
Can I just say here, Anne, that I firstly love that, because when we think about circular economy, or sort of the mainstream understanding of a circular economy, for whatever, it always starts with recycling. It's a recycling economy. They kind of mix those things up. But you're telling us that circular economy starts with the design. We have to rethink our systems and fix the systems that we're operating in to be circular. We can't fix things by recycling our way out of it. And I love that.
Exactly.
Really love that.
Yeah. So I very often describe it as a kind of, in a way, it's like a pipeline. And for example, when I started working as a circular economy consultant in 2013, everybody was focused at the end of the pipeline. Like, okay, exactly like you said, that, okay, how do we recycle more efficiently? But actually we need to shift the focus at the beginning of the pipeline and ask ourselves that, okay, how do we redesign our systems in such a way that we wouldn't have such massive problems at the other end of the pipeline? And I also think that kind of the design approach is really empowering, because it kind of gives you the tools and helps you to develop the mindset, and also provides you with some very concrete solutions that, okay, this is the way to kind of do it. And in that way, the kind of the book is like a compass to your business development. And maybe you ask about how and why did I want to write the book. This story goes back to 2016. I was asked or tasked at the time to develop a 3-day business development program based on principles of circularity. So I started developing this circular design sprint. We piloted it in various countries with number of companies, and to date, I've trained more than 500 professionals, around 150 companies in different countries. And the invitation to companies from the outset was that join the sprint as a team, because it's not just one person in a company who can kind of further and steer this transition, this massive transition, because, you know, there's no doubt about it. It requires a different mindset, less alone different business model. And those companies who really attended the sprint as a team. So there were not just R&D people or sustainability people, but also finance director, professionals from customer interface, from the production side. Sometimes from a smaller company, also the CEO took part. And those were by far the most successful sprints, because the sprint created a platform to kind of develop the shared understanding that, okay, what does the circularity mean in my daily job? What does it mean when we face our customers? What's the new pitch to the customer?
I think I want to highlight that point that you just raised, because I think it's really, really important. The fact that you said the most important, the most successful sprints were the companies that had all the different stakeholders involved. And we've said on the show before that circular economy can't just be siloed. It needs to be a lens that we all look through. Every person in the organization, whether you're procurement or the CEO or the street sweeper or whatever, everything needs to be looked. So I just wanted to, highlight that. That's a really key point, I think, for our listener.
If you want to challenge that a bit or look from the opposite side, not that's because I don't believe in that, but just thinking, when you have like a group of people from different functions or departments from a company, isn't it also a challenge maybe to put together their ideas, their way of seeing things, and seeing the business and the products or solutions they have? And that maybe brings another challenge, like how do you combine everything? How do you put like maybe opposing ideas together to work together? How do you deal with that, and if it's actually happening?
Yeah, I hear your point. What's happened in our sprints is that because it's very kind of a concrete program, so we have a bit of theory with lots of case examples, and then all the exercises, the entire methodology that I've developed is around their own business. So from the first moment they start kind of applying those principles that we learn from circular economy into their own business. So what I've experienced is that actually it helps them to create clarity. First, create clarity. What does circular economy actually mean to our business? Because every business's path is different. And that's why I call my book like a compass and not like a recipe book, because every business's path is different to circularity, even if they worked in or operated in the same sector. And after you've created clarity that, okay, what do we actually mean? And then you kind of align it with your strategic goals, because like Caitlin said, that it can't be siloed. And sometimes, you might see that there are different, the circularity program is siloed, but that doesn't create success. And I think that all businesses want to create a successful transition rather than just nice circular pilot. And then you start and of course, through different facilitation methods, we kind of steer them to narrow down. So it's not just like 100 different post-it notes that we have these marvelous ideas, but during the sprint, they need to narrow down that, okay, what are we going to focus on, so that we kind of avoid what you just described, that, okay, there might be like a confusion or too many ideas flying around, because that's not really helpful to any business. But they need to have, even though it's only 3 days, and of course, since then we've done much longer programs like the Nordic Circular Design Program, which was an 8-month journey to companies. But they need to have like that, okay, this is the roadmap to the future. This is what we are going to develop after we leave the sprint. So just to very briefly wrap up that, so that basically the original question was about why did I decide to write the book, was that I realized that there's a need for a holistic and systematic approach, because many times companies choose that, okay, we're going to implement circular product design strategies, but that's not the same as a successful transition, hence the book.
I was wondering, is it possible that you are able to give us an example of one of those successful transitions, or a company in the process of the successful transition?
I'm glad that you asked that question, because there's so many great examples. And actually, when I started writing the book, I interviewed over 20 companies and experts who have already journeyed quite far. And I also wanted to show through those case examples that when you kind of take it really seriously, when you start your circular journey strategically, then, I'd say that the success is inevitable. So one of the companies, for example, in the book is Houdini, which is a Swedish sportswear company. And they started kind of transitioning through the material innovations. They started transitioning through their business model. And they asked themselves some really kind of difficult questions, I would say. How do we operate within planetary boundaries as a business? I mean, it's a big question, and something that most business leaders would rather avoid and focus only on the next quarter. And of course, there's Philips, which was one of the early pioneers. So it's quite funny when I've done a lot of keynotes and lectures over the years. And then during the first maybe couple of years, there were so few companies that all of us circular economy consultants were using the same examples. It was always Philips, Philips has transitioned from this, lighting as a service, but of course, nowadays they have the circular edition with the MRI equipment and all the rest of it. So it's a very strategic approach, a kind of beautiful way how they combine the emission reductions, different type of customer experience. So there are lots of examples that I hope inspire the reader and also empower them to kind of choose the best practices and start testing those.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking not only about the examples you mentioned in the different companies, but also about like the different times that you have mentioned that you really consider a systemic approach, that you want to have a more holistic perspective about circularity and how companies can approach to it. And there's one thing that came to my mind because I'm reading a book about chaos and the science behind it. And I love it because as a sustainability professional myself, it's one of the things that we deal the most. Uncertainty, systems that doesn't work as we think they should work, and that how affects the way that we create solutions for those systems. So, for example, you also mentioned, and I totally agree with that part, that we have been working with linear systems or like production linear systems for too long, and now we need to go back to the circularity that we used to have when we began civilizations, right? So maybe my question is, how do you feel in your approach to the companies, to like more circular and sustainable companies in general and businesses and production in general? How do you approach this level of uncertainty or like chaotic systems? For example, and let me put you like something that really clicks my mind on this book, the systems that are sensible to initial conditions, right? The systems that you cannot predict it so easily what is the outcome, and that it's related to some studies like trophic cascades, for example, that one small thing in the beginning end up in a very, very, very complex and different thing at the end. Those kind of things like really click to myself as a sustainability professional, and I just wanted to know your approach to it. And also, if you think that maybe something that you wanted to touch later on, it's also like feel free to do it. But if it's something that you think it's relevant for this part of the conversation, I would love to hear your point.
Yeah. No, I love your line of thinking here. Well, what your thoughts bring to my mind, well, one thing is that the future or futures, because we have always multiple futures, it's always uncertain. Even if we continue in a linear way and we think that, you know, this is how the future will look like, but it never does. They're always like unexpected events, and sort of in that way, there's always chaos of different levels. But what kind of I started thinking when listening to you, and that's the entire first part of my book, is the kind of worldview. And the reason I wanted to start with that before jumping into concrete solutions is that I've realized that if nothing changes in your mindset, then probably nothing changes, because we're not just talking about incremental changes. I mean, in practice, yes, in a day-to-day work, I'm not saying that you should change everything overnight. That would be simply stupid. You need to have a very systematic roadmap, and you need to take like little steps every day. But in the big picture, you need to have a very clear vision where you want to go with your business, and what kind of business do you want to be? What kind of futures do you want to create as a business?
I really like that, Anne, because I think that comes back to your values, doesn't it? What do you want to leave behind in the world? And
Yeah.
that's something that we talk about quite frequently on the podcast. Is it starts within us, our attitudes towards how we can affect change, what we value. So really, really great point.
Yeah. Indeed. At the end of the day, it always goes back to values, no matter what kind of hardcore business person you were, and kind of always basing your decision making on numbers. There are always values behind it. What kind of values? That's another question. So I've also experienced it, and I've been lucky to facilitate those processes when I see when the penny drops. I see when something shifts in the mindset of that business leader. And I'm always so super inspired, and I feel so grateful to be able to experience that moment, because when something shifts in their mindset, then they start seeing a horizon full of opportunities rather than a number of different hurdles that we need to overcome. And that's when they can start integrating circularity into their strategic decision making and into their R&D process. Can I tell my favorite story here?
Yeah,
To kind of
we love stories here.
crystallize. And this is, like I said, this really is my all-time favorite story. And it's a story of Ray Anderson, the founder of Interface, the carpet manufacturing company. And the story takes us to 1994. And Ray Anderson had set up Interface. It was a successful company, and he was a capitalist through and through. Like, you know, we are doing business here. But then one day, one of his employees asked him, that, hey, what's our environmental policy? And Ray was a bit astounded at, oh, and then he tried to whisper to his HR manager that, do we have an environmental policy in this company? Should we have?
Yeah.
And that one question changed the entire course of the company because Ray could not get rid of the question. So he went home and was just thinking it over and over. And that one question started his personal journey, interfaces journey towards circularity. And then from that question, they created the Mission Zero program, which was a commitment to eliminate all, and I'm emphasizing here, all negative impacts of the company by 2020. Now, we are obviously past 2020. So 3 years, even before that deadline of the program, they started renewing their mission and they still kind of upgraded it. And it's nothing less than tackling climate change through their business. And when you look at Interface's history, it's a history of innovations. And basically, when Ray had decided that, okay, we will eliminate all our negative impacts by 2020, he had no idea how to do it. Absolutely no idea. Neither did his colleagues. And for example, the R&D director, when Ray told him that from now on, we are going to use recycled materials, his R&D director said to him that it's impossible. And Ray's response to him was that the nature is already doing it. Surely we can do it too.
Oh, so true. So powerful. Mm-mm.
It started with the glass shatter moment.
Yeah,
It was
exactly.
like Ray couldn't unknow what
Mhm.
he knew now, that what he was lacking. And I think we all have similar glass shatter moments as well. Mine was, found out I could finally recycle scrunchy plastic. Asterisk there. But yeah, once I found that, I just went down a hole and never looked back. So I love hearing people's glass shatter moments.
And I wish we have so many leaders like that, thinking that way. And it made you think about another follow-up question. I think is that often in businesses, especially large corporations, we have some people, especially maybe at the senior management, who are reluctant or usually don't see the business case of incorporating products of circularity or any circular solutions. My question is, have you encountered those cases, and how did you deal with them?
At some point, I stopped counting. And I understand them. I do understand them. I think nobody, in a way, nobody wants change. It can be painful until you have that moment when you realize that, now I realize, there is a way, there's a totally new horizon, totally new way of running your business. What I've done is that you need to listen and respect those concerns and those questions and address them instead of sweeping them under the carpet. What also helps a lot if you have done your homework, so you know through and through the company's strategy, so you know where they are aiming at, and always bringing the conversation back to the strategy and how the circularity could support the strategy and help reaching those goals. And I use a lot of co-creation methods to create the ownership of the topic and those strategic, basically when we kind of are developing circularity and start creating those strategic focus areas. So I want to ensure that they have the capacity, they have a thorough understanding. They don't need to know everything, but they do need to know sufficiently. And this is where we come back to that cross departmental collaboration, because there are also stories about that. There might be that one sustainability person who loves circularity. Maybe there's an R&D guy who's also interested in that, okay, we might start implementing something. In walks the finance director and says no. But if they are taking on board from the outset, they understand what this is about. They are given time to grasp that, okay, there's a novel business logic behind it. We can make it work. So that's how you can basically tackle those hurdles. And then the third factor, or maybe fourth, I wasn't counting, is the time. So like I said, that I think you need to plan carefully, very carefully when you're transitioning to circularity. Have the big vision, because that's what's guiding you. That's guiding you through the hard moments as well. But then you need to make sure that you keep the business going. So not doing anything too sudden or unexpected. So kind of carefully planning it so that because we know that, business directors have their own personal objectives, so, that they don't get fired because they try to do something that harms the business, because that's their goal. So we need to find a way that we can align those both.
And it's financial results that drives like the business directors, like strategic planning and so on, right? And it's interesting because last week I met like a sustainability consultant in a comedy show. Which is a weird place where to network for me.
I think this is a great place for everyone who doesn't know. Saeed is a stand-up comedian in his spare time. Just wanted to throw that
I'm
out
not
there.
that, okay? I'm not a professional comedian, but yeah, trying my best as a hobby. But what's interesting is the way she approach her clients is she goes and try to find where they are losing money because they didn't implement some sustainability or circularity solutions. And that's where she starts. She doesn't go to sell sustainability as sustainability. They need to see that they're losing money, basically. And I love that because it works, I think.
Sounds like a great approach. And I think that, losing money, talking about innovation, because I think I very much focus on circularity as an innovation mindset, and also about risk management. Like, all big businesses have their risk management matrix, and many times it's developed through a linear lens. But when you start looking at your risk matrix through circular lens, there might be quite a few blind spots, like resource risk, which, in a linear mindset, we just assume that raw materials appear infinitely from somewhere, which is not a case in a finite planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think now it's a moment to dive a bit deeper into one of the key concepts introduced in your book, which is circular design framework. I think our listener would like to learn what does it mean, and also why it's so important for businesses.
So the circular design framework provides a systematic approach and a holistic approach to develop your business from linear to circular. And if you can imagine like a triangle, so one point of the triangle focuses on business and value chain decisions. So that's one level where you need to address circularity. And then the other point or corner of that triangle focuses on product. How do you start? Well, first of all, what are circular product design strategies, and how do you start implementing those strategies into your R&D process? What needs to change in your product design? And then the third corner is about customer experience. There are lots of great tools out there that could be used when designing circular product or service concepts or product service concepts. So all these three corners need to be addressed when kind of journeying towards circularity. And there needs to be an iteration between those three. And what I've experienced over the past 12 years when working in the field, that sometimes businesses only choose one. We develop this marvelous circular product, which is fine, which is great. It's a good start. But if they don't rethink the customer experience, it may be that the product won't fly.
I love the way you put it as a triangle and connected dots and like inseparable. And one question I had in my mind, is it necessary to start from, or like where do we start? Is it rather business than product or product than service? Or they have to be addressed like at the same time and iterated, like the iteration goes across the three aspects?
Well, you could start from anywhere, but as we all know that nothing really changes if the management is not behind those changes. So there's only so much that you can do as an R&D professional without the mandate from the executive team. And I think that what we've done, for example, is having like a 2 to 3 hour session with the management and the board to just learn what is the circular economy, because it's a complex, we're talking about new economic model, so it's a complex with its multiple dimensions. And of course, bringing it to very concrete, not just sort of talking about marvelous circular economy theories, but actually bringing it very concrete, that what does it mean to your business? But just having that conversation that they can start thinking that, okay, this might be a future way of doing business, because it is, given, for example, the forthcoming legislation, some of it is already in place by the EU. So when I say that the market environment is changing, it is changing because we've set ourselves the goal to become a circular market area, which will also be climate neutral. So to answer your question, it can start from anywhere, but I think the kind of best place to start it is with the management team. And from there, decide that, okay, which ones will be the first pilot projects. And then it can be regarding piloting, testing some, let's say, new materials in your product development, rather than going and changing your business model, because you need to also know that what are you changing in your business model. So that's why there needs to be like a dialogue between those three all the time.
It sounds a lot of work, introducing first circularity, like this complexity, and especially translating that into a specific business of a company in a specific sector, and try to convey to them what it would be and what it would look like for them. And then also try to convey those key messages to the management. So I'm curious, maybe if you would give us an example of how you go from like the high level and also the complexity of circular economy itself to actually the step where you have a content and also the translated, what does it mean to a specific business case?
Obviously, over the years, I've kind of developed my techniques to do it in a very concise way. But I think that there needs to be an opportunity for pausing, because we've talked about the shift required in the mindset. Sometimes, or it always requires a little bit of like, hey, where are we? Why do I think like I think? Why do we business like we do?
Sorry, I interrupt you here. This is something I really loved about your book, is your first chapter where you start about, I think, the way of thinking and how we view the world. And this is probably what you're referring to here, is actually pause and see how we actually want to to view the world. How do we do it, and do we want to change that before actually we dive into anything else? So yeah, this is something that's really loved in the structure of the book.
Thank you. And I think the fish story that starts the first chapter.
Yeah.
Have you heard it, Caitlin and Angelica? It's a very short
no,
story.
I would love to hear it though.
Me too.
It's a very short story. So there are two young fishes swimming, and an older fish comes by, nods at them, and asks them that, "Good morning, boys. How's the water today?" And goes on. And then the two young fishes, they continue swimming in silence. And then the other one turns towards the other one and says, "What the hell is water?" And this is a story by David Foster Wallace, a late American writer and professor. But I really like this story because it highlights the fact that sometimes we don't even understand that we have a worldview, we have a way of thinking about the world, that we take it as an objective truth rather than that, okay, it's something that I can kind of explore. And I think love and crisis are good catalysts for change. And like the story of Ray Anderson shows us that, there was a crack in his worldview that changed it. So
I love that.
yeah, creating, and for this to go back to your original question, that how do you do it? I also use a lot of these storytelling techniques. So stories are really powerful tools, and of course, concrete case examples that, hey, they have already done it and they've succeeded in it. So it needs to be like a combination of this blue skies thinking, theoretical facts, like the facts that we actually have a finite planet, and how have you actually organized your raw material supply chain that might nudge them, but also these powerful stories that enable them, because it also gives, I think stories are great because they kind of empower the listener and they can place themselves to be the young fish or the older fish or Ray Anderson. So in a way, it's a very gentle way of kind of educating.
Usually because you mentioned like you like to go, of course, like the most important thing is to make sure that the management of a company, it's already in tune with the importance of circularity and sustainability. Maybe I wanted to ask you, like in your experience, what is the ideal scenario when you start working with the company, and how that it's differentiates with what you usually find? Like, do you usually find companies or management teams that already had that eureka moment? They already know that, at least most of them, that circularity and sustainability and how they manage their resources is a very important thing, and now they approach to you for the how to? Or do you find in real world, most of them, they still don't have that eureka moment? They just hear it somewhere that is now a regulation and now they need to comply with it. And what is the ideal scenario for you?
Obviously, I've had both cases. But since you asked about the ideal, I could share one example, which is really great. There's a Finnish energy company called Oulun Energia. It's
I've heard
based
about it.
in northern Finland.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of years ago, I got a call from them, and they had realized in their strategy work that, hang on, the energy market is changing and we need to find new ways of generate income and maybe broaden our business. But they didn't have a clue at that moment that, they were interested in circular economy, and they thought that the new business or maybe business department should be kind of something around circular economy, but that was basically the starting point for our work. And it was a great project. We did a lot of foresight work with them, ran a series of workshops, and then sort of based on their strengths and their geographical location, but also on trends and kind of changes in the market environment, we came up with first multiple growth scenarios or ecosystems, and then narrowed them down to two. And nowadays, then after the project, they realized that, hey, actually, we need to create a new business, like create a new company, and it's called Cyklo. And I also sit on their board today. But it was a great way of, they just had a hunch that something around circularity. And from that vast complexity, we came down with, okay, this is it. And then now we are building the biggest plastics recycling plant in Finland that could double Finland's recycling capacity. And there's also a lot of innovation. So it's not just maybe, we're focusing on high quality recycled plastics products, which also can really, when we talk about circularity, material circularity rates, so it can bring that down. Because, if you create low quality plastics, you can't really use it for different high quality applications. But with high quality plastics, you can really decouple the use of virgin raw materials and start using it instead of virgin plastics. So it's a really powerful kind of journey that they've had. Yeah. And it's only about to begin.
So the most important thing is basically to have an idea and at least have had that click moment, that eureka moment. And from there on, the how-to becomes just like a nice and fun journey in some way. Researching,
There's
of
a will,
course.
there's
Exactly.
a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You just need the will.
I love this example, and one thing that came to my mind is the geography, like where this is happening, and led to a question based on your experience, Anna. Do you see that most successful transition are happening in Nordics? Also, I don't know if you had any cases in other regions of the world, because the three of us, we represent Africa, Australia, America, then Latin America, and we are, at least I'm curious now, like to learn, is circularity and circularity transition only happening in Europe, or have you had a chance to see successful transitions in other regions of the world as well?
I have a couple of examples from New Zealand and also from Ghana in my book. And I intentionally wanted to identify case examples from all over the world. Lots and lots of countries have their roadmaps. One example, I was just yesterday talking to Chile. They have their circular economy law. So things are moving forward in all parts of the world. And there's the African Circular Economy Alliance, and many African countries have already drafted their circular economy roadmaps. So I'd be reluctant to say that, we're advancing here in the Nordics. And also I want to mention India. I've been there a couple of times this year talking at different events, and they've introduced extended producer responsibility, which is a really powerful policy tool to start driving. And I mean, it's a massive market. So, when they get it working, and there's a huge and growing interest towards circularity. So I think that's, this transition is happening everywhere at different pace and in a different way. But so it should be, because, it really relates to the culture, their economic structure, their location, their supply chains, all the rest of it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I was recently watching some videos of a tribe from Tanzania. They are one of the latest tribes on like living out of hunting. So they have a fully circular system by themselves because they use the whole thing of the animal. Sometimes I see that these kind of tribes are considered in extreme poverty. However, I was reflecting myself, like working in sustainability and circularity, you hear about a lot of like this kind of, concerns about extreme poverty. But they had clean water. They know exactly how to get it in nature. They had food. They know exactly how to hunt it, prepare it, preserve it, and have it throughout the year. They have shelter because they know how to build their own shelter. And then I was thinking, they have a full circular system themselves. They don't waste anything. They don't misuse anything. What can we learn from this kind of living that we used to have some thousands of years ago? But it's still valid for a quite small part of the population nowadays, but still they live happily in their own way. So maybe now that you were mentioning like the differences between cultures, that is something maybe that I bring myself to reflect sometimes. Like, maybe some places they are already 100% circular, and in their own way, in their own culture, in their ways of living. So sometimes we just need to see like what is the actual issue or problematic within our own culture, and try to understand the others in some way.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, indeed. I want to go back to the circular design framework and the three elements: business, product, service. You mentioned in your book that if you design a circular product features, meaning that you focus only on product design, you also need to design a circular system around it. And I think we have touched upon this already earlier, but could you clarify that further and give us an example of the importance of taking into account the system around the business and the product?
Sure. So even if you implemented all marvelous circular product design strategies, but you haven't built the system around it, the product cannot be circular. So what I mean by that is that when we design a circular product, one of the key things is to design the entire journey of the product. So how does it journey in the system, in the production, in the use phase, in the after use phase, and how do we, as the second principle of circular economy goes, that keep materials in circulation, maintaining their high value. So how do we maintain it in circulation? And those should be the designer's key questions when they start designing a new product. So you need to kind of zoom out a bit before going into the product details, like the nitty-gritty details of the product. But at the same time, if there's no system, let's say you can't repair it, or there's no way that you can return your product so that there would be another cycle, then it ends up in a bin. So there's no system around it. And when we rewind years back, a lot of especially clothing companies and also some electronics companies, like companies selling phones, small electronic devices, started with take-back systems. So they offered that, here's a take-back. You might have seen sometimes where they were not really branded. You could see this like a cardboard box in a clothing store that, hey, bring your old clothes here, we take care of them, we circulate them. And you really didn't know what happened to those. Of course, it's improved since, and that's where it comes to that you need to have the management on board, because as an R&D professional, you're not in charge of your value chain and decisions made in that value chain. So to be able to keep your product in circulation, you need to think about the journey, and you need to basically organize the journey that, okay, I'll just give you a quick example of a relooping fashion initiative that we piloted. This was already in 2014, so that was like ages ago. But basically, we piloted a closed loop system for textiles. And, more than 10 years ago, nobody had really done it. How do you do it? So there was a new, really cool chemical recycling technology developed by the Research Center of Finland. And I know I'll tell you in a minute how it's commercialized nowadays, but basically they wanted to test it, but there was no system, there was no way how they could test it. So in that almost 3-year development project, we and a bunch of companies, we literally came together and we literally drew on a paper that, okay, this is how we collect post-consumer textiles. Then from place A, it goes to place B to be processed. And then there's the place C for the the chemical recycling. And then how it's processed, spinned into yarn, into fabric, into a new piece of clothing. So we literally tested it that, okay, how does it work? So how do you organize reverse logistics? Who's your partner in order to do that, so that you can maintain your product in circulation and sell it or lease it or rent it again? So do business multiple times out of that one product. So that's essentially what it means to build a system around it, so that those marvelous circular product characteristics can, truly help and are truly there for purpose. So you can repair, you can maintain, you can replace worn out parts and so on and so forth. And in the end, you can remanufacture using those materials in your product. Does it make sense?
Yes, and I love everything about this. I want to have a quick stab at wrapping or summarizing everything that we've hopefully talked about related to circular design framework, especially for those listening who might not be maybe they're joining and they're starting their sustainability journey. They're just kind of trying to figure out what circular economy is, and they might not be across all of the jargon that we sometimes throw around. So I think so. Today we've talked about circular design framework. We know from circular economy, like we said before, we need to design out waste. That's principle one. So that's kind of what we're really focusing on. And then that the way that we design a service or product will then, by nature, encapsulate and recapture materials, keep them in circulation and regenerate systems. So you've got the framework, and that's the triangle. We said there's the business we need to think about, the product we need to think about, and the customer. They're all intertwined when we're talking about designing for circular economy. When we're looking at the product, we need to actually look at the physical thing. So, are we making a water bottle? How can we reuse or use recycled materials? Can we use recycled aluminium? Can we get it locally? So, thinking about the product itself, but then zooming out of the product, like you said, we need to look at the system. So, where are our materials coming from? Are they renewable or regenerative materials? What's the waste that's lost in the chain? How are they getting to us? So, kind of looking at stepping out and looking at that, and then yeah, just how it's moving through the system finally to our customer. Of course, we've got business in there. They need to have the will and they have to have the way. We talked about that. But then when that product or service reaches the customer, we need to think about their experience and how they use it. Where are they buying it? Is it online? Is it in person? Is it easy to access? Is it making their life better or easier? How are they using that product? And what happens when that product breaks or it reaches the end of the life? We talked about take back programs. That's great to have some sort of let's recapture those materials. But what if how are we disposing it? Is it going to be captured in recycling? Is it going to end up in landfill? Are we just producing something to dispose of it later? And that all of the things that we're talking about here, right? It's not simple by any means, but is that a fair summary, would you say?
It is. We haven't touched upon the circle around the triangle yet, though, which is natural ecosystems. But I think you captured it beautifully, Caitlin, to kind of summarize that. It may not be easy, but I've experienced it so many times in my career that it's super inspiring, it's super rewarding. And when the team is on board and the more they learn about it, everybody's like 150% in. They're like, this is what I want to do. And many times it also aligns with their personal values, which is also really important that, I'm so enormously proud to be working for this company who is transitioning to circularity. So those are really great moments to kind of witness. There are many different levels when we talk about circularity. So, at the beginning we talked about recycling, and obviously that's the kind of the outer loop of the entire kind of model. And actually you should start with and we talk about products, high quality products. How do I design high quality products that have a long life? And how do I then maintain those products? How do I then repair or enable, perhaps from the business perspective, repair, the maintenance, repair, remanufacturing, and then only the last bit is recycling. But we also, and that's why I like to break it down to kind of maintain the structure, that first we have the triangle and we think about that and we think about it through the business operations and through the strategy, but we also need to take one more step back and zoom out just a little bit more to see the big picture. Are we doing right things, and are we doing things right in the bigger picture? So just to understand, and that's why I've introduced the planetary boundaries framework, for example, in the book, that you need to have at least a basic understanding of how the system works, so that you know that in the bigger picture, you are contributing and you are going in the right direction and not just creating problems elsewhere. Just very brief example to make it a bit more concrete. Recycled plastics is better than virgin plastics, right? It enables us to decouple from the fossil-based plastics, and obviously it enables us to reduce the demand for virgin plastics. However, you can manufacture recycled plastics in many ways. You can add additives that are toxic to create different types of characteristics for the plastics. If you're doing it, then obviously it's not safe to circulate. It's not safe to use it. Imagine those toys, for example, we've heard so many stories that there are toys that have toxic chemicals. So you need to make sure that the additives that you're using are safe for the user, for the people in the production line, but also that you enable the safe circulation of that product so that it can really have multiple life cycles, not just one. So that's just one example that how do you need to make sure that you are creating a safer and cleaner future rather than just sort of circular but toxic. And of course, then the idea of regenerating and sort of helping nature to thrive. But I think that's something that we need to talk at in the next episode.
Yeah. And I feel like the more you tell your stories and the case studies, the more we see the complexity indeed. And this links back to one of the aspects you mentioned in your book, and that is the fact that circular business design framework is based on multiple disciplines. It combines like circular economy itself, design thinking, system thinking, future thinking, behavioral economics. And I think we need people from all those areas to really put together like a transformation strategy, or like find a way to go through business, product and services, redesign and so on. And I understand why cross-functional team collaboration, also multidisciplinary expertise, is needed to achieve something that is real. I'm now curious, and I guess our listeners as well, to learn, how do you enable that to happen? How do you, if you, with your clients, how do you give them the picture, what is needed actually to start, and how do you get them to get the resources to get started in the first place?
Well, the first thing that I'd like to highlight here is that although we talk about sort of complex matters, but I'd like to remind us all that there are also a lot of other complex matters that business leaders need to deal with. So this is no more complex that, wow, this is like a rocket science. It is not. And they are intelligent people. They are used to learning and grasping new things and new concepts and new ways of operating all the time, because the market changes, the customer demands changes. So think about when we started transitioning from analogical to digital, or maybe you're too young for that, I don't know, but I remember it clearly. And now the entire sphere of AI. So I don't want to kind of think that this is something that they couldn't cross, but because they can, and I've seen it many times, and lots of them are already, fully circular. So I just think that it's good to keep that in mind, that, intelligent brains, there are a lot of intelligent brains in companies, so they can surely understand how the circularity can be implemented in their company. But the second thing is that, and that's my job, to make it tangible, so that kind of floating sort of multi-dimensional creature that we can think of as circularity when we talk about it with all its kind of levels and dimensions. It's my job to make it something tangible and concrete, something that they can grasp on and understand that, okay, out of these, hundreds of opportunities, we will focus on this. Because you need to, like the circular and Oulu energy example that I gave you, there were so many different opportunities that they could have gone for. And then they decided to go with that, okay, plastics, that's something that we want to tackle. And that's something that we want to address and kind of make business out of it. So, yeah, in collaboration and through co-creation with business, that's how we do it. And that's how we make it concrete business opportunity, not just like, wow, it sounds wonderful. But maybe the last thing to mention, I think that circular economy is a marvelous, not just mindset and toolkit, but approach, a new model, because regardless of your kind of personal values or behavior, or whether you care for the environment or not, it kind of speaks to everybody. Because even if you didn't care for the environment, you'd still care for the business. And then you can see that, hey, there's a really lucrative business opportunity behind it. So it's not kind of based on ideologies or anything, but it's kind of to everybody, to all businesses and to all business leaders and R&D professionals.
And I think another driver is regulations around the world, pushing businesses towards more sustainable practices. And even though if the business directors are not even circular or thinking is circular, I think that's something that pushes them to consider like any possible circular business opportunities. How did that part play or contribute to make easier decision making in favors of implementing circular solutions based on your experiences? Is it the key driver, or it's maybe not necessarily the main key why to get started with circularity?
I mean, it definitely plays a big role, a very big role, because the legislation creates conditions for companies to operate. It creates the framework. So, for example, with the Nordic circular design program that I just mentioned, we had the entire first workshop basically for the management level people on the legislation. And there were lots of kind of initiatives that they were not aware of. And it really sort of caught their interest that, hey, hang on, because obviously it's always better to prepare strategically rather than wait that, okay, now it's come into force and we need to do something about it. So kind of to develop your own strategy. Of course, before the legislation, for example, we already have the eco-design for sustainable products regulation in place. But even before we had those circular forerunners, like when, for example, Philips started and those pioneers, there was nothing. But it definitely speeds up and supports the transition, because it creates a level playing field for all companies to really kind of transition that, hey, if you want to remain competitive, if you want to succeed, this is the sandbox that we are going to have. You can play in it or you can play outside it. Your choice.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to take our listeners to another aspect I think is very important. It's understanding the customer needs. This is something that you wrote. This is something very, very important. And if understanding of customer needs is the start, I think it's also in terms of business in general. It's something that is practiced when we think about business models and so on. But how, in terms of circularity, how do you get started with that? How do you push your clients to do that, and what is the approach in general?
Mm. Well, just to put it in the context that why I wanted to write about it and why actually that part, service design and customer experience in my book, comes before product design strategies, is that, and I've listed different failures that why different circular pilots have failed. And many times it might have been, for example, an internal sustainability goal, and there's a willingness to do like a circular pilot, but then it requires too much effort or it's too complicated for the customer. For example, there was one shoe brand that created a microsite that, hey, we have this circular program and, you can return your sneakers and we can repair them. But nobody could find out about it because it was not integrated into the main site. So those kind of complexities that are not easing and making the customer experience attractive was one of the kind of key drivers for me to write about it and emphasize the importance that you need to start from understanding your customer. And there's also a story of Electrolux, who, rather than they wanted to design a new type of kitchen, but not starting from the product design, but they asked from themselves that how can we make healthy and sustainable diet a preferred choice? And then in collaboration with universities, they started to observe how people actually behave in specific contexts. And they started talking with experts and doing like a lengthy design research that was focused on people's actual behaviors and not like questionnaires that, this is how I would like to behave. And through that, and based on those results, they went to their drawing board and started designing the actual kitchen. So that was the marching order. And I very much recommend all businesses doing the same. So basically, we are asking, when we talk about circular customer experience, we're asking people to change something. And as I mentioned, change may not be easy. So how do you kind of ease and invite the customer to purchase or rent or use a circular product over the linear one? And just very quickly, a couple of tools that you may want to familiarize yourselves with is Jobs to be Done framework. I think that would be a very good starting point. And of course, as a first question, before starting to fill out Jobs to be Done template, ask yourselves that, who are our customers? What do we actually know about them? Do we know them or not?
Yeah.
Jobs to be Done framework is really nice because it actually helps you to list that, okay, there's the core functional job, which is obviously, for example, that this microphone works. That's the core functional job. But it's never just about the core functional job. There's always a related job, which might increase the efficiency, which might lower your risks, whatever it is. And not only that, there's also emotional job. So the use of the product, does it give me peace of mind, for example? How does it make my life easier? And then, of course, financial outcomes. Is it cheaper me to use? Or if I can subscribe to it, I don't need an upfront investment. And then the user and systemic experience as a kind of last aspect. So, how do I feel when using the product? And then, because we are in a circular context, we can't forget the systemic experience, that are we contributing to the bigger picture or not? So how does it, for example, reduce emissions or increase biodiversity, whatever the systemic experience could be? So that is one really good tool to get started.
Wow, thanks for sharing. And while you're sharing, I think about the point where we need to zoom in and zoom out, zoom in and zoom out. And there's a lot of background work to be done just to understand the consumer behavior and assure convenience. I think this is something I learned about because when I tried the small projects for reverse logistic for used phones. Actually, it was in Sweden and Norway, and the idea was to collect unused phones that we usually have in our drawers. And we did a survey and we also a couple of interviews to study actually basically whether people would be willing to give back those electronics. And we were a bit positive, but we found out that most people, I think around 70 something, 75%, they would not, because usually either they have some data and they are in there and they are not sure if it will be deleted because maybe the phone is not functioning anymore, but it still has the data stored in it. Also because some people keep that phone as a backup in case their main phone is not working. And also they sometimes keep it just to give it to one of their family members and so on. So we realized like this is not really something working. And also another reason was that people would like you, like as a collector, if you want to have like reverse logistic, they want you to come to their place, and they are not willing really to spend time, go on a Sunday, look into the drawers, maybe in the basement, and take those old phones and go to a specific shop or a container park to give back those electronics. So it's really a question of convenience. I think studying of behavior and what you all mentioned is something very, very crucial, I think. So thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you. I've shared already a lot, and this might deserve like to have a second episode indeed in the future. So before we wrap up, we have this tradition where we have our guests leave in a question for the next guest, and we have a question from you from previous guest, and that is what was your dream job when you were little? What are you doing now? Which we learned, of course, and importantly, how did you fulfill that inner child within us? How do you actually still fulfilling that inner child? Like it's a bit personal, professional, mixed question, but
But it's a lovely tradition that you've created. I think it's very nice way of kind of passing on the question. My dream job as a child was a dancer. I
wow,
saw the
okay.
TV series called Fame at home, and then I thought, wow, I want to go there. And then I did become a dancer. So contemporary dancer and dance teacher is my first profession before changing careers and starting to work first in sustainability and then in circular economy. And it's amazing how many things a career as a freelance contemporary dancer teaches you, and all those kind of things that become assets that you can use in your current career. So a lot of perseverance, a lot of courage, a lot of sort of attitude that I've been able to harness in my current career.
Thank you for sharing. Do you still like, I don't know, in your work, do you still have, I don't know, you use some, I don't know how to call them, aspect things from your early start career as a dancer right now in your work, your strategy, the way you're approaching clients and so on?
I do, and it's actually really interesting, and this is something I'm going to quote, something that Kate Rayworth said in one podcast that I was listening to, that the human body, because we all have a body, it actually a really good analogy when we talk about the health of the planet. So, if you are in balance, you've slept well, you've eaten nutritious food, and you exercise, and you have social life, then you are operating and you're much happier, you're operating much better. And the same goes with the planet, that you're trying to find that balance so that we would have a healthy planet to also secure our way of life and business operations. So I think that in a way that the kind of interdependencies and the kind of systems you already started during my dance career
Mm-hmm. No. Then next I would ask you then to give us a question for the next guest.
My question would be that if you had a magic wand, what would be the thing that you would command with your magic wand at this point of history, given the kind of conditions, the situation where we're living in?
Mm. Good luck for the next guest speaker.
Just
No idea.
I wish for 1,000 more wishes because we're going to need a lot of them.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. This is
Love that.
amplification of the question. Perfect. Thank you so much. I think you have given us so much. Thank you for sharing all your insight, and especially the stories and case. So that's very, very, very important, and our listeners would love it, I think. So I think like it's maybe important for our listeners to learn where they can find you, and also if you'd like to share something like as we wrap up this, if our listeners could take one action right away and go implement it, what it would be. I know we have gone from like big picture to multiple concepts of circular economy, but now I'm trying to bring you back to really practical action, maybe to our listeners like at a personal level, not necessarily that they are in a business or they own a business. So it could be anything that is practical and general.
Well, maybe the kind of pause and think that, okay, what kind of life I want to lead, what kind of impact I want to create in the future and now, and giving yourself time to learn about circular economy, because one company that took part in those aforementioned circular design sprints said to me that it's like you put these new specs on because it changed so much the way that they started seeing the world that you can't take them off anymore. So give yourself that opportunity, and also remember that everything around us is designed and we have the power to redesign them for the better.
Such a powerful message. Yeah. Where our listeners can find you and any resources you would like to share with them.
Yes, sure. So please connect with me in LinkedIn. Then regenerativeunlimited.com is my website. And then there's also a dedicated website for the book called circularstrategies.com.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anna, for joining us today. For our listeners, you will find Anna's book, Circular Strategy for Success, and links to her work and the website on the show notes. So as always, don't forget to follow, share, and join us next time on Millennials Gone Circular podcast. Until then, keep it circular and maybe a little regenerative too. Thank you.
And that's a wrap of episode 13 of Millennials Gone Circular. We've waffled on in other podcast episodes about how we need to design for circularity. We keep harping on about it. But what we hope is that Anna's insights help sort of demystify what circular design is actually all about and inspired you to think about how the business, the product, and the customer side of things need to all be designed for circularity. Anna's circular design framework is a brilliant place to start if you're a founder, a designer, policymaker, or creative working on circular solutions. And definitely check out her book, Circular Strategies for Success. And if this episode sparked something in you, we'd love it if you'd share it with a friend, leave us a review, or drop us a comment. Before we go, Millennials Gone Circular is a production of The Waste Not Spot. The Waste Not Spot recognizes the many traditional landowners around the world and their continued stewardship of our planet. We pay our respects and offer our deepest gratitude. Until next time!